we are same human being. Mentally, emotionally, physically. As far as our brain is concerned, same, no differences. But with this brain, some intelligence, which is basis of wisdom, and then also emotion, such as anger, jealousy, fear, related with our brain. So we are same human being, and important is everyone want happy life, do not want suffering. And then, according to now scientists, basic human nature is more compassionate, because we are social animal. Any social animal, you see, mentally or emotionally, there is something which bring together. So we human being, are social animal. Each individual's life entirely depends on the community. So that's our basic nature. Yet, you see, we human being, sometimes this intelligence, you see, beyond our control. That means basic human nature is more compassionate, warm-heartedness. But some intelligence sometimes is beyond our sense of concern and sense of responsibility and compassion. So once our intelligence, you see, without sense of compassion, then our intelligence is combined with anger or fear. Then sometimes this intelligence really creates a lot of problem. So now today, 7 billion human beings, everyone come from their mother. Everyone, you see, survived with mother and friends, loving kindness or affection. Yet, eventually, when we not much pay attention about this basic human value, we very much sort of attracted about external sort of the material thing. Here, I have the view, the existing modern education is very much oriented about material value. That's I feel we have to think seriously. Actually, as I mentioned earlier, everybody, as a human being, more compassionate, sentient being. However, now we can see children. See, they don't care what the other children belongs, what religion, what nationality. So long they smile and play together, completely same, equal. One time in Pestalozzi, in Switzerland, you see, there one home, Palestine, next Jew, play together, live together. So then when we join or education sort of field, then we too much emphasis differences, different religion, different nationality. Within this country, the caste system, unfortunately. So, there's too much sort of division. That is the source of problem. So, wherever I have sort of opportunity to share with other people, I always see telling, we need a sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. Otherwise, with too much emphasis, differences, then the concept of we and they become very strong. And that's the basis of killing. And past several war, mobilized violence. Now, everyone, everything, because all this occasion, war, killing, is very much based on the concept of we and they. So now today, suppose the modern world, suppose the things much sort of develop. However, with too much emphasis, the concept of we and they. And then killing. I think a lot of money spent for weapon. These are really our own creation problem. So a lot of problem which we are facing is essentially our own creation. So now the remedy, these things, you see, we should think, we should have sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. And we are social animal. Now today's reality, Eastern depend West, West depend East, similarly South, North. So different religion, different nationality is secondary level. Top priority, we are same human being. With this feeling, I also, you see, I firmly believe we are same. So wherever I go, I always feel we are same. We are human brothers, sisters. That mentally, emotionally, and immediately when I met someone, immediately feel like brothers, sisters. If I too much emphasis, I'm Asian, I'm Tibetan, I'm Buddhist, and then furthermore, I'm Dalai Lama. Then actually you yourself isolated. On this planet, only one Dalai Lama. Not thinking this line, thinking I'm a human being. Then immediately, you see, I feel we are same, human brothers, sisters. So I always make a teasing or joke, and sometimes some Indian police morning, I always say, come out to my room and some walk and say hello, this police. Sometimes some police very serious. Then I use tackle. Then some smile come. So I really feel oneness of 7 billion human beings is very important. So on that level, wherever I go, so everyone want happy life. So real source or foundation of happiness is warm-heartedness. And human nature also more compassionate. So, irrespective whether believer or non-believer, or believe this religion, that is a secondary question. Real question is, we want happy life. We want friend. We want a friend who's smiling. Then we feel happy. But some people, they are looking very angry face. Then we don't want to see such people, isn't it? So, whenever we meet people with smile, and we feel happy, isn't it? So these are not question of religion, just by nature. Look, dogs. You see, dogs which peacefully remain with other dogs, then they are very peacefully. So sleep like that. And those dogs who always was barking away, no, they usually is isolated. No other dogs to come closer. So like that, we human being, more compassionate human being, you find a lot of friends, a lot of smiles. So that's the source of our happy life. And all, what's the physical health also. Some scientists now say constant anger, hatred is actually eating our immune system. So not talking about next life or not talking about God, but simply see everyone want happy life, and we are social animal. So with warm-heartedness, your days and weeks and months be more happier, peace. So ultimate source of happiness is within ourselves, not money, not dollar. One time in America, I think Houston, one big university, I went there, and then the chancellor accompanied with me. So a little bit long distance, so we talk. And then he, as a chancellor, good salary, good fame. But after sort of exchange some greetings, then he told me his sort of the mental level much sort of worry. And then I hold his hand. Then you see, I expressed this my belief, my experience. Then within few minutes, his face became more peaceful, more smiling. Later, some of his staff member, told some Tibetan, before he very much sort of unhappy person, so he prefer lonely. He do not, because alone is alone. He do not sort of want to talk with his staff. So he, he prefer just alone in his office. Then after we met, then he become very active. So his staff member, more work. So the ultimate source of happiness or even our health, peace of mind is very important. So modern education very much oriented about a material value. So we can see some millionaire or billionaire, but mentally very unhappy. So take a lot of drugs like that, and worst case, suicide. So ultimately, we are social animal, our nature more compassionate. Therefore, we should pay more attention about this basic human value. Then you individual will be more happier, more calm, and your family more happier. And then where you live, your neighbors also, you see, become easily good friend. So that's the way, I believe, that's the way to build happy society. This is my number one commitment. Number two commitment, I am Buddhist. So then, even today, or not only in the past history, but even today, due to different religion, you see, killing each other. In Burma, even Buddhist, you see, killing some Muslim. And in Muslim countries, Shia, Sunni, killing each other. Unthinkable. In this country, I think more than 1,000 years, all these different religious traditions come here, we live together. Basically, I think harmoniously, mutual respect. So religious harmony is possible. India, big nation, over 1,000 years, nearly 2,000 years, different, I think different world major religious tradition all live together here. I always was mentioning, because a Parsi community, about 100,000 population in Bombay, and they carry their own sort of tradition, Zoroastrian. Very small sort of population, less than 100,000. And Bombay, big city, millions of Hindus, millions of Christians, millions of Islam. But live very happily. No sign of fear. Those small community, Parsi community, they carry their own fire puja like that. So that's India. The religious harmony over 1,000 years, I think wonderful. So now, India, our time come, not only just to preserve these things, but show outside world religious harmony is possible. Otherwise, it's unthinkable in the name of religion and killing each other. Unthinkable. So that's my, I am Buddhist monk. I never state Buddhism is best. Like medicine, you cannot say one pill. You can say this. You cannot say this pill is best medicine. Impossible. Judging the individual's physical condition, then we can prescribe it away. Or in your case, this medicine is best. Similarly, generally I think medicine for physical. Religion is medicine for mind. So therefore, the different people who have different mental disposition, we need accordingly the religion. To some people, like theistic religion, very helpful. To some people, non-theistic religion, very helpful. So according individual mental disposition. You see, let's say, to some religion, to some people, very effective. Some people, some cases, not much. So therefore, it is individual matter. According to theistic religion, all these religions created by God. But Islam, Judaism, all accept creator. But I think one creator, same creator, is in different places, different period, is in different teaching, is taught. So that means God himself, accepted among his creation, there are people who have different mental disposition. Then non-theistic religion, no creator. Flu, sir.
No.
Some flu. And now my nose, I think you may notice, little bit swollen. So I think I prefer this. So my number 2 commitment is promotion of religious harmony that we really need today. Then third my commitment is I'm Tibetan people. Very much trust me. So, as far as Tibetan political sort of matter is concerned, since 2001, I entirely, completely retired from political responsibility. Even I think 69, I want my official public sort of statement. I express the very institution of Dalai Lama should continue or not up to Tibetan people. So then 2001, I retired. We already achieved elected political leadership among our refugee community. So we sincerely practice democracy. I think China should learn from us how to practice democracy. Usually the Chinese, they believe they're more advanced, Tibetan, very backward. But in reality, I think since 7th century or 8th century, I think Tibetan, first they developed their own script. 7th century, Malay, 7th century. Sometimes I feel the Tibetan king, 7th century, Songtse Gampo, he married with Chinese princess, so very special connection. I think he must enjoy. But letter is concerned, I think the Tibetan 7th century Tibetan king, I think he found too complicated Chinese letter. So he invented, he wanted to develop our own script, which copy from Devanagari and alphabet, Kakakanga, like that. So that emperor, quite clever. He enjoyed marry with Chinese girl, Chinese princess. I think Chinese princess And the Indian princess, I think Chinese princess may be more attractive. So Tibetan script developed in 7th century. Then 8th century, Tibetan king, Chisung Tse, he himself, son, his mother is Chinese, one Chinese princess. So very close connection with Chinese emperor and Chinese Buddhist, very close. But then he preferred Buddha Dharma, Buddhism should bring directly from India. So he sent an invitation to, at the 8th century, 9th century, at that period, the top master, great scholar of Nalanda was Chandrarakshita. He invited to Tibet. And Chandrarakshita, in spite of his old age, he accepted. Then he introduced Buddha Dharma according to Nalanda tradition. Within Buddhism, Pali tradition and Sanskrit tradition. Pali tradition is a basis of Buddha Dharma, but not much use logic. And Sanskrit, later Nalanda tradition, Sanskrit tradition, extensively use logic. So the basic logical way is we always, you see, the question, raise why, that. Not say yes, no, why. So even Buddha's own teaching, according to Nalanda tradition, you see, we raise the question why, then investigate, reason. So some Nalanda master actually rejected some Buddha's own word. If we accept this Buddha's word, it goes against the reason. So reason is more important than just faith. Buddha himself, you see, mentioned, "O my follower, monks, scholars should not accept my teaching out of faith, out of devotion, but rather thorough investigation." So Nalanda master, such as Nagarjuna and Buddha Balita and Dignac or Dharmakirti or Chandrakirti, these masters is make distinction. This Buddha's teaching we can accept. This Buddha's teaching we cannot accept. A great thing. So therefore, since Chandrarakshita came to Tibet, in spite of his old age, he taught Nalanda tradition. Nalanda tradition very much emphasizes logical approach. All Buddha's teaching, particularly in the field of Madhyamika philosophy or Chitta Mantra philosophy, we extensively use logic. So now, the Buddhist philosophy, the modern sort of scientific subject, the Karsachukti, quantum physics, very similar. Chitta Mantra philosophy, as well as Madhyamika philosophy, all, you say, accepted. Nothing exists as appears. There's big differences, appearances and reality. Chitta Mantra also used to say, appearances is something objectively exists. But if you investigate the reality, nothing objectively exists. There's quantum physics also say that. So I think many of you may know Raja Ramana, the physicist, late Raja Ramana. He once told me, in the West, quantum physics is something new. But in this country, 2,000 years ago, already developed quantum physics. It is very true. And he takes the Nagarjuna's quotation, thinks nothing exists as appears. Appearance so objectively exists. But if we investigate, nothing find. So finally, mere designated. So sometimes when I discuss with a scientist about quantum physics, of course, I respect them. But in mind, I feel I know better. As a student of Nalanda tradition, you see, the quantum physics, nothing exists as appears, and entirely developed on observer. Then quantum physics not yet developed. Where is the observer? The Nalanda tradition, where is the observer? Thorough investigation. So there are different schools of thought when they investigate about self. Like that. So, therefore, Nalanda tradition is very close with scientific thinking. Now, some people, now they express that Nalanda Tibetan Buddhism is Nalanda tradition. And that Nalanda tradition, Buddhism, is very close with scientific thinking. So now these days, since I think about 40 years, I developed close contact with scientists, mainly cosmology, then neurobiology, then physics, especially quantum physics, then psychology. So meeting with scientists, Western scientists mainly, very useful, mutual learning. Like that. So therefore, the religion just based on faith, belief, and then difficult. But Nalanda tradition based on reason, investigation. So therefore, we can go side by side with the modern scientist, modern science. Sometimes maybe too much kasa, presumptuous. When I discuss with modern sort of the psychologist, then the Western psychology is in their level compared with Indian psychology, and looks their sort of so their knowledge looks like kindergarten level. India highly developed, really highly developed. I think this country are quite remarkable. Over 3,000 years already developed concept of ahimsa and karuna and shamatha, single-pointed meditation, and then vipassana, analytical meditation. Over 3,000 years already. So Buddha himself, product of these traditions. Then he further sort of developed like that. So therefore, the India, quite remarkable. The ancient Indian, over 3,000 years, India sort of tradition, ahimsa, non-violence, and karuna, I think, very much relevant to today's world. Isn't it? So then So therefore, you see, as a Tibetan, I try to preserve these knowledge which come from India, from Nalanda, 8th century, as I mentioned earlier. One Tibetan master or masters of some writing a few years ago at Sarnath, Sanskrit University, I think Sanskrit University. One professor, you see, translate one writing by Tibetan. Around, I think, 14th, 15th century. So since he translated, so he knows. Then I asked, since you know the author of that book, and I asked, do you think that author can be Nalanda scholar or not? Then he mentioned without hesitation, not only become Nalanda scholar, but one of the top scholar of Nalanda, he mentioned. So sometimes I jokingly telling, we Tibetan, physically not Indian, but mentally we are more Indian than those modern Indian who educated according to Western education. So we really preserved the Nalanda knowledge over 1,000 years. So now I, as a refugee, came to this country and a lot of sort of meeting with Indian scholars or practitioners. Traditionally, you Indian were our guru, teacher. We are student. Indian word chela. We are chela. And not only just a chela, but a reliable chela. Isn't it? While you see the Guru's own land, a lot of ups and downs. During those centuries, we chela kept all this knowledge. So now, today, sometimes I jokingly telling, traditionally, you are our guru. We are chela. Now, modern time, it seems we become guru. you becoming chela. So, ancient Indian knowledge, really wonderful. Now my third commitment is preservation of these Tibetan knowledge which originally come from India. Then fourth, my commitment is preservation of ancient Indian knowledge and then revival of these knowledge in modern India. These ancient Indian knowledge very relevant to today's world. Today's world, too much self-centered attitude and violence. So India's non-violent, ahimsa, non-violence, and then karuna, compassion, very much relevant to today's world. So now India, I think, should combine modern education, modern knowledge, very helpful, science, technology, these things. Meantime, revival of ancient Indian knowledge about inner world. These two things combined. Then that's only India can do, no other country. So in this country, this knowledge, just question of revival. It's your own tradition. So that's my latest sort of commitment. Try to revival of these ancient Indian knowledge in modern India. So that's about my report.